I've just been running up and down stairs bringing games from the loft 3 floors above me down here to the basement because I am going to talk about games acquired and purchased in April of 2019. So I will first go over the games I acquired this month, then I'll talk about the games played. Now the first thing I'm going to mention is this game I purchased called Zombie Kidz, which is the very first legacy game designed to be played by young kids. It's just an unassuming little box, but it has provided us with a lot of entertainment so far. However, I'm going to go more into detail when I talk about the games played in a minute here. Now, if you saw my video about the first 2 Harry Potter books, you'll know that I've been working through that series with my 9-year-old son, and we are now, I think, midway through the 4th book, roughly, and some friends of ours gave us this amazing gift, which is the game Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle, and they also gave us the expansion that goes with it, which is called the Monstrous Box of Monsters expansion. So this is something I was really excited to receive because it starts off as a very basic deck builder and it's a great one to dive into with my kids. But again, this is one I'm going to talk about in a few minutes when I go over games played. So that was a really cool gift from our friends. On my birthday, I decided to take a little trip to the local game store and I ended up picking up a little gift for myself. This is the new edition of Camel Cup, which is now called Camel Up. And I actually had the original edition back in the day, and we enjoyed it well enough, but I also had Reiner Knizia's Winner's Circle, which is a game that we enjoyed, and so I ended up selling the original edition, but then when I saw what they had done with the newer edition, and just a couple of fun little tweaks that they made to the rules, plus the enhancements of the physical components, and the fact that we're kind of played out a thing a bit with Winner's Circle, and so it's on my auction pile of games to sell. I thought, you know what, I'll take the money I will make from Winner's Circle and get the new edition of Camel Up. So I haven't had a chance yet to play the new edition, but I do know we'll enjoy it based on the fact that we had the original game and did enjoy it well enough. And finally, I have another birthday gift here. This one is not one that I purchased for myself, but was rather given to me by a friend. If you saw my previous video for the games played and purchased in March, you'll know that a friend of mine convinced me to start playing Magic the Gathering with him on a regular basis. And like I mentioned, I'm also very new to the whole thing. I had never played Magic before. So I was like, yeah, the game's okay, but I'm having a good time with my friend. However, now I have this, which is a Magic the Gathering 2019 core set. So whereas before I was playing pre-made decks and each game just kind of flipping up one card at a time, seeing what happens and what I could do with the cards I got, but now all of a sudden I have almost 200 cards. I got to open 10 sealed packs in this starter kit, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, look at the decks I can build now. Look at the combos I can put together. And my excitement for the game went from fairly minimal to sky high with the prospect now of being able to deck build. This has turned Magic for me from a almost purely tactical game to a game with a ton of strategic depth as a result of being able to build those decks before playing the game. And then of course there's the whole aspect of the excitement of opening sealed packs and every so often finding a card that's worth a few dollars. So yeah, there's that kind of element where I'm going, ooh, this is a little bit too fun maybe. But let me talk more about that in a few minutes as I switch from games purchased to games played. So I'm going to clear the desk of games purchased and get right to that. Okay, first I'm going to go over games that I played with my family, starting with a game called Codebreaker, which, like I said in my March video, I knew as Mastermind when I was a kid. Ended up playing a few more games of this with my 9-year-old. I did talk about this one with my March games played, so I won't get any more into that. But again, a few more games I enjoyed with my 9-year-old. Speaking of which, we got in several more plays of Dungeon Mayhem, both 2-player with my 9-year-old and 3-player with both my 7 and 9-year-olds, and it's a game we've continued to enjoy, swapping the different characters, each of whom plays a little bit differently, just to battle it out and see how that plays out. So it's been a lot of fun with both of my kids. Now getting to this Zombie Kidz game, which I showed you a minute ago. This is one that, like I said, I got because it was advertised as a legacy game for children. And it is a very simple, light game. The first few plays in particular, there's really not much to the game, although it was one that we could just basically dive right into and start playing, even with the young kids. So we've been playing this as a family with all 4 of us, and we've been having a lot of fun with it. Basically, the legacy component comes into play because every few plays of the game, you get to unlock another envelope, which will add more stickers to the game, maybe more cards, perhaps some new elements for the gameplay. Well, so far it's always added new elements for the gameplay, really. But my kids, and my 7-year-old in particular, can't get enough of this game. They keep asking to play it again, and I'm sure part of the appeal is getting to open the envelopes and see what gets added to the game. So while it's not a game where the adults can say, oh, it's fun for us and the kids, because there's really not much to the game. You just kind of go through the motions. Although as we unlock more things, the strategy becomes a little bit more interesting. But it is a cooperative game, so we can play it together as a family, enjoy the experience together, let the kids do some decision making, and even if there's not a lot there for the adults, for the kids it's a really great experience. And moving on now to the Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle deck building game. This is a really great sort of child's first deck builder sort of experience. It's not for young kids because there is a bit of complexity. Well, maybe not so much complexity as the game length requires a little bit of sustained attention. The first play in particular wasn't too bad on a complexity scale, but it did take a while for us to get through the first game. And looking ahead now to what we've unlocked from that first scenario, it's clear that the second game is going to be even considerably longer because we have a couple more bad guys to add to the mix that we have to defeat in order to win the second scenario, which we haven't yet got to. However, the first game I played with both of my kids, and all 3 of us really enjoyed it. It is, as a basic deck builder, a pretty fun game, and it's one that I have enjoyed as well. For my 9-year-old in particular, this is quite a special game given the fact that we're working through the books and the movies together. And the fact that they used movie art, I actually quite enjoy for this game. Not everybody loves it when games just sort of cut and paste movie images, but it does bring up the fun associations for us with the movies that we've watched so far. This is also a game where each scenario correlates to one of the books, so we can't jump ahead of where we're reading without risk of spoiling things. So we basically have to kind of work our way through it slowly, and at this point we can play the first 3 scenarios, and once we finish the 4th book we can jump ahead to the 4th one, because each scenario allows you to open another packet and add some more things to the game. Almost legacy style, but you're not actually permanently altering anything in the game, you're just basically adding new things to it. So yeah, this has been a really great game, a lot of fun to play with both the kids. Even the younger one, although he hasn't been following along with the books, has kind of been paying attention a bit when we've had the movies playing, so he knows a little bit of what's going on. And he knows at least enough to have a general idea of the characters and the things that are happening in the game, I suppose. Now jumping next to a game that is one that I enjoy a ton, but my 9-year-old requested that he play it with me one day. So the 2 of us did a 2-player game of the Quest for El Dorado shortly after I got the Heroes and Hexes expansion, and I incorporated a couple of elements from the expansion into the game, namely the heroes and the positive effects, without worrying about the whole Hexes side of things. I've talked about the game before and how much I really enjoy it, and I'm glad to have the expansion that allows us to add a few more things to the game, which I did feel like the base game needed a bit more to sustain the interest level, I suppose. And then the final one I did with both the kids is Hero Kidz, which I've sort of pasted over an old Stratego box. But this is essentially a print and play kids RPG, where I go onto the Drive-Thru RPG website and it allows me to purchase and download different adventures for the Hero Kidz RPG. And what's great about it is the entire adventures are all scripted, all the elements are created for it. So basically what I do is I just print it all out, I sort of cut out the maps and the characters, and I allow the kids to color each of the character standees, which they really enjoy doing. They also enjoy doing some coloring on the maps too. So prior to each adventure, they have a fun time coloring everything that I'm preparing to put together for the adventure. And then when that's all prepared, we can dive in and go through the adventure together. And me as the DM don't have to worry about putting together any sort of elaborate story or connections. We can just kind of follow along what's pre-written. One thing I found with another Kidz RPG we had tried for a while, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but I'll try to remember to write it in the video here. But one thing I found with that is they did not have that whole prepared story. They basically just gave you the background of the world and the characters, and it was up to the DM to put it all together and create the scenarios and the adventures. And it was just way too much work and more time consuming for me than I had the time to prepare for them. So although it is still a fair bit of work for me to print out and cut out and prepare all the elements for each of these adventures, it is comparatively much easier than having to make all of it up off the top of my own head. And once again, I will clear this space and talk about the games I've played with the adults in my life. Alright, the first game I'll mention, I don't actually have the game box for because it's a game owned by our friends, and that is Betrayal at Baldur's Gate, which we played in March for the first time, and I talked about it then. So we decided to play another adventure, and unlike our first scenario that we played, which, like I said in March, was really kind of weird and ended very quickly, but ended up being a good starter game for learning the game, this scenario actually was a little more involved and interesting. It, interestingly enough, ended up being a fully cooperative scenario, so there was no player traitor in the game and we all had to work together. And it came down to the tightest squeaker of an ending where we had the one turn left in the game, there was one final monster turn, there was one final roll of the dice to see if the monsters would be victorious or not, and we had set it up so that we had a huge advantage with the die roll where it would be almost impossible for the monsters to roll a success, and of course the odds, which were so in our favor, turned against us, and the monsters ended up winning with that final roll on the final turn of the game. So that was a much more interesting ending than our first play, and we did enjoy ourselves again with that one. Next up, I will talk about the magic stuff again. I did not yet in April get to play with all my new cards here, but we did play some more of the pre-made decks, and we added in the new to me aspect of having decks with 2 colors of mana in them. Previously I had just been playing single color mana decks, and so I got to experiment and try out new decks that had 2 colors of mana. Again, I didn't find the game super exciting or anything. It was just fun to play with my friend there. But I can already tell you that when I get to May's Games Played next month, it's going to be a lot more interesting for me to talk about this particular game. So stay tuned for me to be doing a lot of talking about playing with decks that I got to design myself. So we'll leave that for now and talk about that in May. And next we'll get to a couple of beasts here, both of which are legacy games. And the first of which is Aeons and Legacy. So we finally got to start with this one with my Legacy group, and we've been doing a pretty good job about playing it almost on a weekly basis. And it's been so fun. All 4 of us who are playing through this game have been enjoying it a ton. We played through the first 2 scenarios and won each of them. In the third scenario, we got up against a pretty big challenge. We lost our first play, but won our second play. And then just last night, we actually won the 4th scenario. So we have been enjoying this a lot. It's been a really well-designed progression of being a fairly simple deck building game. And at the end of each adventure, the ability to add more things and customize characters and cards and gameplay has been just really well done. My only real critique, being a person who is very much into visuals, is the fact that the art in this game is just terrible. But it does the job and doesn't distract too much from the extraordinarily fun gameplay. Moving on up now to the king of all the games, we finally got back to Gloomhaven. We had been away from this game for a few months after blasting through the entire campaign over the course of several months and dozens of plays. And my group of 3 was finally able to get back to this. And since we've officially completed the campaign, we're basically playing some of the road event or city event scenarios or some of the other random scenarios. There's definitely a ton of content that we have not explored and that we can play with the characters that we have here. So while we wait for the expansion to come out in the near future, there's more than enough stuff in here for us to keep playing for quite a long time if we so desired. So that was really exciting to get back to this game. I'm totally not burned out on it, despite the fact that it is definitely my most played board game by hours played, which is saying something given that it was just released in 2017. Now to wrap up, I'll just summarize the new to me stuff from the month of April. So the Heroes and Hexes expansion for the Quest for El Dorado was new to me, and I enjoyed at least some parts of it, the parts that I tried. I've been looking at the curses aspect of it and seeing what I want to do with that part of the game, but for now I enjoyed the elements that I added. The Harry Potter Hogwarts battle was new to me and was a game I was really impressed with. I was happy with the design and had a lot of fun with the kids in our first play of that game. Zombie Kidz is new to us. It's been a huge success with the kids, a little bit boring for the adults maybe, but not to the point where I don't enjoy playing it with the kids because it is pretty exciting for them. And then finally, Aeon's End Legacy, which we played 4 times in April, was new to us, and again has been a massive success. So that was my month of April. What about you? Is there anything exciting that you managed to acquire in April? Are there any games that you were particularly excited about from last month? I'd love to hear about them, and please do keep the discussion going in the comments below. The preceding video has been brought to you free of charge by me, Josh. The only thing I ask in return is that you could do one of the following. Give me a thumb up, push the subscribe button, or share the link to this video with somebody who you think would enjoy it. Cheers. Sound check, sound check. I've just been running up and down the stairs from the loft, 3, 4, gosh. Some friends of ours gave us this amazing gift. Oh, I just farted when I reached for the game. But I also had, what the f is it called? Oh my god. Reiner, can you... Did I have that upside down? Of Dungeon. Now getting to this Zombie Kids games. Oh, what's it called? And since we've officially completed the campaign, we're basically paying. But I can already tell you that when I get to next month's games played,